So we move on now to what I believe is our last question. Why is Isaiah Collier the new number one in the class of 2023? Pretty straightforward question here that you've discussed a lot, but that we've not discussed on this channel. Yeah, I think you got some insight here on this one, Adam.
Yeah, and so listen, this is a class where you could make a case for a variety of prospects to be number one. The questions that I think are most significant are what is a realistic expectation for everybody next year as a college freshman? What are their long-term, what's the long-term NBA prognosis look like? And you have to address both of those in terms of a ceiling, like a best case scenario, and a floor, a worst case scenario, independent of any like totally unexpected variables. And so when you do that, I think Collier's just the prospect who checks the most boxes. I mean, he's a point guard with good positional size. He's a solid athlete. The intel in terms of his intangibles is really, really high. The big kind of liability in his game was his perimeter shooting, but he's made clear strides with that. He's also probably the best passer in the class. I mean, he's a true point guard who's really smart, can read the game. And so everything he does translates to the next two levels. And so in a class that lacks the guy who jumps right out and says, I'm the guy, when you start going into it, I think Collier is just the prospect that checks the most boxes because everything he does translates to the college game, and it could translate to the NBA game. I said it in one of our meetings. I said, guys, if you told me Isaiah Collier averages 9 assists per game in the NBA in 5 years, I wouldn't blink. And that was admittedly not that's a line I had talking to a college coach about him. It's exactly what he said. And the fact that he's making progress in the areas of his game, which were the liabilities, specifically his shooting, I think is just makes me want to kind of buy his stock that much more.
All right, so I got a question as it pertains to the number one overall spot in this class. With it being so fluid, do guys who play at schools like Sunrise, IMG, Montverde, do they have a leg up in the fall and in the winter when it comes to potential rising in the rankings over guys like Collier who play for their local public high school and maybe don't have the elite level of competition on a night in, night out basis during the academic year?
They have an advantage in terms of visibility because they're in all the big events. They're often on TV more often. Often on TV more often. They're on TV more. But I think that, I mean, you don't have to look at any further than last year's rankings. Nick Smith stayed home, and he finished as the number one ranked prospect on his way to Arkansas. So it's our job to dig a little deeper. I think for the general public, the guys at those high-profile schools are easier to see and easier to come up with an opinion on. But for evaluators, for scouts, for college coaches, you've just got to, if you have to work a little bit harder to get that evaluation, then that's what you have to do. And here's the thing: Isaiah Collier still plays for a very good high school program. They still play in a lot of high-profile events. So there's not going to be a lack of evaluation opportunities for him.
Good stuff. I think that does it for our reader questions. I got one more. All right. If you were, you are the head coach at Finkelstein State University. You guys have very low academic standards. You'll basically take anybody.
Great NIL program though. Great NIL.
The collective is humming. You got to pick between Bronny James and Jizzle James. Who are you picking?
I'm going with Bronny James. Bronny James is higher, and you couldn't help yourself, could you? Bronny James is higher in the rankings. I thought he had a very solid summer. The thing with Bronny is we're seeing a little more alpha from him. We're seeing him be a little bit more dynamic with the ball. He played with the ball in his hands almost exclusively all summer as a point guard. Made really good decisions. Was a playmaker in the open floor. We've known he's a passer, defender, open shot maker. We knew all that, but he's doing more to make plays. And it's he's a guy that's sometimes hard to evaluate because of like that European tour they just did. I'm not sure that was a great evaluation setting. It was obviously very cool and very relevant for branding purposes, but When you sat and watched him at the Peach Jam, and there were some highs and there were some lows, but you could see that overall he was trending in the right direction, which is why he's continued to rise in the rankings.